Vậy là chúng ta đã đi đến phần cuối của chương trình. Và đối với một diễn đàn là lãnh đạo thích ứng cho một cái chủ đề mà ngay từ khi bắt đầu chúng ta đã được ông Sahi gửi cho mình hình ảnh của những cái loài vật, từ con khủng long cho đến cái loài vật mà vẫn còn thích ứng, thích nghi với lại những cái sự thay đổi của môi trường để ở lại cho cái sự tồn tại của chính nó trong cuộc đời này. Thì khi mà mình nghĩ về cái quá trình thích ứng, mình nghĩ về làm cách nào để chúng ta thích ứng được đây. Cái gì ở trong con người của chúng ta luôn luôn ở đó, và thực ra là một cái bộ phận hay một chức năng vô cùng là quan trọng nhưng lại rất là khó để thay đổi. Thì đó chính là cái bộ não của chúng ta, cái trung tâm điều khiển mọi suy nghĩ, hành vi, đưa ra những cái thôi thúc để cho chúng ta có những cái quyết định là có thay đổi hay là không. Và cái sự thay đổi này nó đi kèm với những cái cảm xúc gì. Thì đây là một bộ môn khoa học rất là đặc biệt. Neuro Leadership là một học viện, tổ chức hàng đầu thế giới về phương thức xây dựng, lãnh đạo và tổ chức dựa trên khoa học não bộ. Công ty Neuro Leadership đã mang những cái chương trình thay đổi có tính chuyển hóa rất là sâu sắc này đến các cái tổ chức Fortune 100 trên thế giới. Và để khép lại diễn đàn lãnh đạo thích ứng ngày hôm nay, chúng tôi rất là hân hạnh mời được bà Lynda Edwards. Bà là nhà tư vấn, cố vấn của Neuro Leadership. Và trong cái thông điệp ngắn ngủi để giúp cho chúng ta sâu chuỗi lại những gì mà mình nghe được ngày hôm nay, để cho mình có một cái nhìn sâu hơn vào bên trong cái động lực thôi thúc chúng ta hành động như thế nào để đạt được những cái thay đổi hay hướng tới những cái sự thay đổi trong một cái thời đại có quá nhiều biến động và quá nhiều những điều mà mình không lường trước được. Thì một lần nữa xin được kết nối với lại cô Lynda Edwards, kiểm tra xem là chúng ta đã sẵn sàng chưa để lắng nghe phần chia sẻ kết thúc chương trình với diễn giả Lynda Edwards. Hello,
Hello.
Lynda.
Hi, how are you? Thank you for the wonderful introduction.
We are great, and we are so sorry that we have you waited for like half an hour, but now we are so ready to listen to you. So the stage is yours.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much. And a lovely warm welcome to everyone. I'm really honored to be with you this afternoon. I know you've had a very busy and full day. I've heard some amazing stories that have come out of today. And I really want to be able to shine a little bit of the neuroscience light on some of what you may have heard through the stories and sharing today. So a little bit about the Neuro Leadership Institute. Our role, our mission is really to make organisations more human through science. So by understanding a bit more about the brain, building the types of leaders, building the types of organisations that we know will serve us well into the future. Our CEO and co-founder is Dr. David Rock. You may have heard of him before, and he drives our organisation, drives the thinking. We've partnered with a number of large organisations on trying to build the culture that makes them successful and sustainable in the long term. Those really human-centric organisations that want to do their best work for their people and for the communities that they serve. Now, I know you've had a lot of information shared with you today. And before we get into some of the neuroscience, I want to give you a minute just to think through some of what you've taken away today. So I'm keen for you to take maybe just 30 seconds. What has excited you most about the discussions from today? And then how can you ready yourself to take the next step in your own leadership journey? How can you apply the adaptive leadership from the stories and the thinking and the frameworks today? What can you do differently as your next step? So I'll give you 30 seconds. Have a think about that. Maybe write down some notes if that's helpful. when we come to sessions like this, what we learn, what we hear, the ideas that come to us in the moment are most impactful if we take them forward. We know you're going to walk away with a list of things that would be insightful, that will really build your leadership practice and require you to change a little bit. They might require you to do something you've never done before. It might require you to change a practice that you're currently doing. And what I want to explore is what that means in the brain when we do that. So the brain is really interesting. When we actually have a change, if there's something that happens in our business, some of the speakers talked about how their businesses had changed, how they had to bring it back on track. So a change in our business, a change in our personal environment, maybe something we just need to do more of to take our career forward. The brain does some really interesting things. So on the left-hand side, you can see where the brain actually, if it sees something as a threat, we get this distress response. We're nervous, we're anxious, we're frightened of the change. We don't want to do it. We tend to avoid it. We go back to what we do really well already. That's not going to serve us well as adaptive leaders. That's not going to help us build our leadership practice if we want to become better leaders, to become more human-centric leaders in our businesses and in our personal lives. On the right-hand side, we can do things that actually have the brain see change as an opportunity, something to learn from, something to grow, something to experiment and try. And that actually produces what we refer to as eustress. When we have eustress, the chemicals are different in our brain. It gives us energy, focus, motivation to go and get things done. Having that right framing is really important to build your leadership skills, to take away all those things that you've heard today and do something about it. Let's have a little look at threat a little bit more, because threat is in our brain a lot of the time. And in fact, what we know, because of our survival instinct, our brain scans the environment all the time and determines if something is a threat and it's bad for me, or if it's a reward and I want more of it, I want to go toward it. The thing is about the brain, because of how we've evolved and this survival instinct, most of the time we'll think something is a threat. We'll think something is bad for us. We'll think it's a scary saber-toothed tiger coming at us, or a rustle in the bushes is going to be something that's going to eat me. Our brain still thinks that way because of the threat response. So even the simplest of things, we are more nervous about than we really should. And what happens because of this biological limitation? We actually have an impact on how we can think when we're in threat mode. So you can see on screen there, these are the things that happen to us when our brain is thinking something is a threat. We don't think as clearly. We actually get a little bit dumber. We're not creative. We can't problem solve. We can't see the bigger picture, and we don't collaborate well. So as a leader, this is incredibly impactful. How do we do our best thinking? How do we work with our teams? How do we work with those around us? How do we create new solutions? How do we put in practice some of the great learnings from today? If we operate in threat mode, our rational part of our brain, the one right behind here, is not doing its best job. We're not able to see things clearly. We don't make good decisions. We get a little bit anxious and the brain's a little bit wired. So what I want to introduce you to, and we have many of these resources available we can send through if you'd like to have a look a little bit further. But what we want to look at now is a model for understanding that I don't want my threat to be up here. I want to be a leader that is able to respond rather than react, a leader that is able to adapt when I need to, a leader that is able to work well with others and be human-centric when I need to. And I can't do that if my brain is at threat. So let me give you a model or a tool that will help you bring that threat level down and help you be the best leader you can be. So the model I want to introduce you to is the SCARF model. It was created by our founder, Dr. David Rock, and it is an acronym for status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And the model together represents all of the particular psychological needs the brain has, all the different buckets or categories that the brain looks to have met before it can bring that threat level down. Now, interestingly, all adult brains have the 5 categories, but you'll probably have 1, maybe 2, that are more important to you, that you've grown up and you've developed your own style and personality, and they're more critical to you. You need more of those things in order to not be in threat. So let me step through them. And as I do, I ask you, write down some notes. Which one do you think is the strongest one for you, the really important one, that if you don't have that need met, you go into threat mode, your back goes up, your mind gets very focused and potentially anxious? Okay, status. Status is the idea of how you fit into the group. Am I more important or less important? Am I valued and respected for my contribution? When we don't get that, we can have a threat response in our brain. Certainty is around knowing what's coming up, having a bit of a being kept in the loop, knowing what's ahead of me, being able to predict to a degree what's happening. If we don't have certainty, that can create a very strong threat response in the brain. Autonomy is my sense of control or choice. Do I have some decision around what I do, or am I being told what to do all the time? That's a threat for the brain. The R in the SCARF model is for relatedness. This is about your connection with others. Am I in the in-group? Am I part of the team? Or do I feel a little bit on the outer? If I'm in the outer, I don't seem to be able to find my way in, I could be having a relatedness threat as a result of that. And fairness is this perception of fair exchange. Was I treated fairly? Were others around me treated fairly? Was it a just process that we went through? When we don't experience fairness, that's a very strong threat trigger and is actually like disgust. We respond to it like disgust in the brain. So when we understand a little bit about the SCARF model and all these domains, remembering, of course, that you have all 5, but you'll have 1 or 2 that are a little stronger for you. I'm very high in autonomy. I don't like being told what to do. I'm sure that makes me a terrible employee sometimes. I like to be able to carve out my own journey and determine what I can do and when. Now, when you understand the SCARF model, there are things you can put in place to make sure that you're getting the autonomy that you need or asking for it, to make sure if your certainty is high, that you're creating more clarity about what is ahead of you, finding that out. If you'd like more information about the SCARF model and what you can put in place to take that threat level down so that you can do your best thinking, so that you can promote the mindset that you need to be a great adaptive leader, so you can make the right decisions, you can work well in teams, all of those great things that the human brain is capable of doing every day. is only available to you if your threat level is down. That's when you see options. That's when you see opportunities. That's when you can see the way forward in your business or in your leadership practice. I hope that was helpful. I'd like you to just do a little bit of thinking for me now, if you will. You've heard from some amazing people today. You've had some amazing resources shared with you. Hopefully the neuroscience was also interesting for you, just a very small serve of that today. But I would love to know, and write it down to hold yourself more accountable. What is the one thing you will do differently when you go back to work on Monday? What's the one thing you're prepared to commit to and do differently on Monday? And I'll give you 1 minute just to think and write that down. And I'd like to leave you with this final comment before I hand back. And that is, when you know the brain, when you understand why the brain operates in a particular way and how it reacts, how threat actually drives so much of our thinking and our behavior, our risk tolerance, why we try new things, why we don't try other things. When we know the brain, you can be the best leader you can be, and you can really build more human-centric organizations that understand the role, the critical role that people play in our success and how we can lead them better through that. Thank you again for this opportunity. Thank you for your time. I know it's been a very big day for many of you, and your brains are probably exploding with lots of ideas and opportunity. But I really appreciate you inviting me along today, and I wish you all well.
Thank you so much, Lynda.